I'd like to open the City Commission meeting. It's 9 a.m. It's Saturday, the 23rd of September. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just remind everybody, please, to silence your cell phones. City Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Frzlowski?
Here.
Commissioner Marone?
Here.
Commissioner Grouse?
Here.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, this morning we're here, this special City Commission meeting to discuss the budget. We have the budget agenda. Are there any suggested changes to the agenda?
No. I'll move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. City Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Frzlowski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. City Clerk, can you read the millage ordinance and the budget ordinance for the record?
Ordinance 2023-11, an ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, establishing the millage rate for fiscal year 2024, beginning October 1, 2023 and ending September 30, 2024, providing and announcing the name of the taxing authority, the rolled back millage rate, the percentage increase over the rolled back millage rate, and the millage rate to be levied, providing for reading in its entirety and providing for an effective date. Whereas Florida statutes section 200.065 requires the adoption of the millage rate by separate vote prior to the adoption of the annual budget. Whereas Florida statutes section 200.065 requires that prior to adoption of the millage levy ordinance, the following be publicly announced: the name of the taxing authority, the rolled back millage rate, the percentage increase over the rolled back millage rate, and the millage rate to be levied. Whereas in no event may the millage rate adopted exceed the millage rate tentatively adopted. Now, therefore, the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida hereby ordains: Section 1, the name of the taxing authority is the City of St. Pete Beach. Section 2, the rolled back millage rate for fiscal year 2024 is 2.7327. Section 3, the fiscal year 2024 proposed millage rate is 13.12% higher than the rolled back rate. Section 4, the millage rate to be levied for fiscal year 2024 shall be 3.0913 mils per $1,000 of taxable value. Section 5, this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon adoption. Ordinance 2023-12, an ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2024, beginning October 1, 2023 and ending September 30, 2024, providing for the incorporation of the adopted capital budget as the capital improvement element of the comprehensive plan, providing for reading in its entirety, and providing for an effective date. Whereas Florida statutes section 166.241 requires the adoption of a budget each fiscal year, parent FY. Whereas the amount available from taxation and other sources, including balances brought forward from prior years, must equal the total appropriations for expenditures and reserves. Whereas the adopted budget must show for each fund, as required by law and sound financial practices, budgeted revenues and expenditures by organizational unit, which are at least at the level of detail required for the annual financial report required under Florida statutes, section 218.32, parent 1. Whereas the adopted budget must regulate expenditures of the municipality, and an officer of a municipal government may not expend or contract for expenditures in any fiscal year except as pursuant to the adopted budget. Whereas the City of St. Pete Beach fiscal year 2024 budget is balanced, is presented at the level of detail required to file the annual financial report, and shall regulate expenditures of the city for the period beginning October 1, 2023 and ending September 30, 2024. Now, therefore, the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida hereby ordains: Section 1, the fiscal year 2024 budget document attached hereto as Exhibit A, the budget, is adopted by reference and is made a part of this ordinance. Section 2, upon adoption of the budget, the capital improvement element of the city's comprehensive plan is hereby updated to reflect the fiscal year 2024 through fiscal year 2028 capital improvement plan. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon final adoption.
Okay, well, thank you. I believe the Mayor Petrilla has joined, or at least his picture's up.
Not connected, or you just connected to audio.
Okay, well, we had your picture there for a moment, Mayor, but can you hear us? Okay, well, let's get going. I think he'll try to connect. So we have the two ordinances for discussion, and I'll turn it over to the city manager and city staff. And
This is a public hearing, so I would suggest that right now to just open the public hearing, get comments, and
okay,
we can dispose of that portion.
sure, thank you. Any members of the public wish to address the commission? All right, thank you. We'll close the public comment section. Thank you. And then turn it over to city staff.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. The budget that you have in front of you reflects the changes from the first budget hearing, where we adopted a reduction in the millage rate to 3.0913, which is really the rate that was adopted on first hearing. At the first hearing, the budget documents basically were accommodated to reflect and balance the budget at that level. So the appropriate reductions have been made, and so you have a balanced budget per state statute. And that was the only change that we had from the first budget hearing to this hearing. Sheila is here to answer any other questions from the commission, but we really have no additional presentation on the budget this morning. I'd be happy to answer any questions or discuss anything. Keep in mind that you do have to vote on the millage ordinance first. So when you're ready to do that, the millage gets adopted first, and then the budget can get adopted. But either one can be discussed at this time.
Okay, Mayor Petrilla, now we saw your picture. Are you with us? Okay, well, we can't hear you. So, to the commission, anybody want?
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I could, please.
Yes, city attorney, please.
Before you take up the budget, I guess we're talking about both at the same time. I wanted to bring up an item that we've been discussing with the city manager for several months. It was brought to our attention many months ago, and we've been looking at this. This is on page 34 of the budget. It's a line item that is for $28,600, and it's described as the city manager's health insurance opt-out benefit per contract. Just researching the record of this and having conversations over the last couple of months, the reference to the employment contract is as follows. Employee may select to opt out of the city's group health insurance and shall be paid the standard annual compensation rate set by the city. The only reason I'm bringing this up is that I want to make sure that the city's reserving its right to make a decision on this. I'm finding it, based on the research that I've had, that this is an unusual situation, because apparently the way that the administration has been reading this is that the city manager would be paid the cash value, 100% of the cash value of the health insurance plan if he were to use it, but he's opting out. So that's what that payment is for. I've looked at other contracts. The prior city manager actually had another sentence in there that said, and the standard rate is X, which what is set by the city is usually, if you opt out, it's around $2,600 a year. So I just wanted to make sure that by adopting this budget with this in there, that the city is not waiving its right to make the final determination on this in terms of how to interpret this contract.
Okay. Thank you for that. I I understand your points. I don't know if any of the other commissioners have any comments on that point?
I don't think having it in the budget's a de facto waiver. I think it's a safeguard for a situation that's still uncertain.
Okay, I just wanted to get it into the record.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, City Attorney.
I had a comment. I had a comment on the millage. I know during the budget workshops, we talked about potentially lowering the millage, but we never really defined a number. So when we define that number of 3.0913, I just thought it'd be interesting to take a look at what's the real impact of that from a resident standpoint. So if you had a value of a house that was had a taxable value, I won't talk about market value, but a taxable value of $500,000, that amounts to a savings on your city tax bill of $29.35. So I'm in favor of lowering it. I think it's always good when you can lower it. That's a good thing. Of course, it sounds good politically. I think it's been commissions before us that have been fortunate enough to be in a position, financial position, because of property values going up, to be able to now be in a position where we can lower the millage and not have it hurt. But the comments I made last time is that what's interesting is that if you've been homestead exempted here for a long time, you really have benefited from that homestead exemption, and your property, your taxable value is a lot less than your market value. And especially if you go back, and like some people have been here for 30 years, I think it's been about 30 years for when they adopted homestead exemption. So there's a real inequity in homes. If you had your home for 30 years and someone bought a house right next to you, they're paying probably twice the property taxes that you're paying. And when you are under homestead exemption, you have that benefit, plus it's capped at 3% per year, forever, as long as you keep that as your homestead, as long as you don't rent it. So the only point that I wanted to make is that this is benefiting our residents some, but what's really benefiting is if you have a second home or an investment home or commercial property, including hotels. They're the ones, if you run some numbers on hotels, they're benefiting by thousands of dollars. So I just think it's easy kind of politically to say, hey, we want to lower the millage rate, and I'm in favor of that. But there's still inequities in the system, and really the ones that benefit proportionally are not really our residents on this. And in past commissions, I think the idea was, I heard that in the last meeting about, tax and spend. Really, the past commissions have taken that money and put it away. And the amount of our unreserved, undesignated fund balance, of which we're calling a couple different pots of money right now, is really high, higher than it's ever been in the history of the city. In some cases, almost triple what it was, 30 years ago in terms of percentage of general fund, which puts us in a good position because you never know when. I don't want to sound bad, but you never know when the next downturn is going to happen. No one ever predicted 2008 to happen. Not many people saw that coming, and that happened, and it happened fast. And that really was a tough time for not only this city, but many other cities in terms of how you had to really tighten things up. And it took years to kind of bounce back from that, and now we're in a really good financial position. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of help kind of quantify those numbers a little bit, just for us and for citizens that are watching.
I think you make a good point. I think that there are two ways we as a commission can be disciplined with regards to fiscal responsibility, and that is, one is trying to keep a budget tight and close to the edge, so we're not just getting more and more bloated. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is save money and service debt. And that's another way to be fiscally responsible without a forced cut in the millage rate, where we have a situation like we just had with this storm, and there may be a day when the county doesn't come to the rescue or no one comes to the rescue, and we do have that pot of money, We don't have to issue a bond and borrow money. We have that pot of money that we have to go to. And I think part of fiscal responsibility is saving and debt service, debt reduction. So I think you make a good point, and I think we can be fiscally responsible in both ways.
Yeah.
Mr. Rouse, anything? Mayor, anything you'd like to add on that?
No.
Okay.
Not at this time.
All right, thank you.
I will make a motion to approve ordinance number 23-11.
I have a couple of comments.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to review, because I don't think we've done it, we had the discussion in the first meeting, are some of the investments that we're making, and there's some small investments, there's some large investments, some related to headcount, and some in the capital plan that I'd like to discuss. We haven't had a chance to discuss, for example, the capital plan at all, and some of the projects, and particularly those with spend for 2024, because some of the dollars are quite large. And yes, we can afford it, but as I mentioned in the previous meeting on September 11th, from a fundamental strategy standpoint, I don't think we've had enough discussion, or at least I don't feel so, on what's our strategy, where are we spending, where are we investing, because some of the investments are new, some of the investments are large. So for example, and these are in no particular order, I mean, on the head count, we have a new position called Communications Director, a full-time position with big dollars in the city manager's department. Previously, that was a half a head count as a PIO, and I want to understand what's the strategy. We had 3/4 of a head count for the library. We had 4 for the fire department, a small amount in some in public works. So are these the investments that we need to make? I mean, there's, and from I call a nice to have versus a must have. And the same thing on the capital plan. We've got a number of items, and I'll pick on the park because, I'll pick on the big number. I think we've reduced Egan Park to $800,000. If we remember, we go back to last year, we had, I think, almost the same amount for Paso Grill Park, if not more. And we reduced that and put the money towards flood mitigation purposes, which in my view, and particularly the events of the last month, are a much higher priority. Not that I'm not saying our parks aren't important, but should we be building parks, or do we need to ramp up the speed and activities we have around flood mitigation? Because we dodged the bullet again. You can only dodge so many bullets, and I'm not saying, I'm not wishing anything on us, of course. And do we have the right investments? I think our roads, for example, our roads are atrocious. It's probably the #1 complaint I get in my district. I drive around the district, I must have 10 places that need paving. We've got craters. 64, Gulf Winds Drive is falling apart, and I'm only using that. We all have it. It's across, we drive around. Those orange cones and purple signs are out. So should we be using some of that money into what I call a higher priority must-have short-term activities we need to do? We talked about the credit card processing fees. We're spending $300,000. I haven't heard anything back if we have any sort of activity going on there. I don't know if we need, from a parking standpoint, parking revenue, to update our projected revenue stream based on what's happened in Paso Grill and the closure of the parks. Of the parking places. I don't know how long that's going to be in place. But we're from 6th Avenue South, we have no parking revenue coming. I don't know if that's an impact. Our IT investment is quite large. The ask is large. One of the things for the other commissioners I sent to the city manager about a week ago, or after the last meeting, I was thinking maybe this is an opportunity for us to partner with the surrounding smaller cities Treasure Island, South Pasadena, and collaborate and share infrastructure instead of each one going alone and making larger, I mean, not saying it's not necessary, but a larger capital investment, maybe we can share. I mean, Treasure Island, if we look at their website, there's a lot of backbone, a lot of public facing that looks the same. I don't know. Can we share servers and consolidate and therefore reduce expense? Just, these types of things, as I was looking at the budget over the last couple of days. There's also an item that I don't see anywhere in the capital plan. I know there's been discussion on the Veterans Memorial Park at Upham Beach. My understanding from the Veterans of South Pinellas is that they got funding from the county to move that forward, but we didn't have anything in the budget, and I think this has been a discussion item for quite some time. Paso Grill Park, I also see $200,000 in the budget. If I remember, in the capital plan, we said $150,000 at last year's meeting. It started at a much higher number and then was reduced down to 100 and then went up to 150, and now there's 200 in there. So we haven't really had a discussion on why we need an extra 50K there. And again, I know when we get through the appropriations process, we'll have another debate and look at each of these items in and of itself. But I think these are things, strategically that we haven't discussed. Thank you. I don't know how you want to approach those, or?
Well, I think you make excellent points. I do think when you look at it globally, the infrastructure capital improvements are so large. Those numbers are so large. Sometimes moving pockets of money from one line item over really affects the residents' quality of life on something that we could be doing that will affect the residents' quality of life immediately while we're working on those long-term infrastructure projects. So I kind of look at it as there's some pots of money that could be shaved down just because we probably don't need that much for this, and we really haven't. I mean, I started looking at it as I know how much air conditioners cost. Do we need $30,000 for Warren Webster? I went and looked at the AC. So that's an example where we could really, if you were doing household income, in your budget for the next year, you would probably get more accurate numbers, and then you'd have some extra money in the pot. Then I look at that money in the pot and say, would it be enough to pave X, Y, and Z? And I was saying, like, it might not even put a dent in it. So while we can work on the numbers that you're talking about, I think from a capital improvement perspective, moving that money to somehow, we somehow think that we're going to get the capital improvements done faster. I just don't think we are, just because there's a lot to move there, number one, from a mobilization standpoint, and the expenditures are exponential. Do we need X amount of dollars for this or X amount of dollars? I don't think so. If I really fly spec this, really drill down on it, I could find a lot of areas where we could take a little here and we can take a little here, for sure. I just think that some of those things, if we get too skinny on them, they are a resident quality of life daily, the things that they see. Obviously the roads we see them every day, we drive on them. But those other things that say, oh, the city did this and the city did that, we got that done. So I 100% agree with you on that. I think if I had had some experience with this budget process before, I may be making some different recommendations. I'm new to this, so I probably looked at it more from a 30,000 foot view than kitchen table view, but I wholeheartedly agree with your sentiment.
On the on the issue with staffing, yes, you're 100% right, Vice Mayor. There's a lot of new resources, new positions being added to the budget, and all that came out of discussions through the last 5 or 6 months as we were going through the budget process. I'll tell you from my perspective, the only 3 positions that were added that are really critical, which are the 3 additional firefighters for Fire Station 23. All of the other ones are nice to have as you define them. Yeah, the PIO is one of the things that got discussed in here, going from half-time to full-time. Our residents are telling us we want to hear more and more from the city, and they love the fact that 4 years ago we didn't have a PIO, that we have interaction. But it's a never-endless appetite for more information. But yeah, is it critical? No. It's nice to have like the part-time position at the library, the deputy at the fire station, the additional people on to maintain the fleet. Those are not saying that they're not justified. They are, but they're nice to have. The only 3 critical positions that I will tell you, I think it will be really degrading the service if we don't accommodate the need for those 3 additional firefighting jobs. Those are really, if the commission wants, there are 2 things that can happen today. The commission can say, you know, these other jobs, hold them until we do further review and everything else. Or you can, if you wanted to cut them today, we can cut them. Any additional dollars that we have available, they will flow down to a contingency reserve account that can be reused later on by the commission at a later date, or simply say, yeah, let's get approved in the budget, but let's not fill some of those jobs until further discussion happens. In terms of the balance of critical infrastructure versus some of the complementary things, I think the budget reflects that priority. If you look at the amount that we have for next year, $14.5 million in the general fund, it is less than $1 million that is going to parks. The other $13.5 million are going into hard infrastructure, facilities maintenance, facilities repairs. So I think that priority is pretty closely reflected in the budget. Yeah, do you want to do 100% of the money to hard infrastructure? I will say that Commissioner Barron makes a good point that sometimes you have to sprinkle some of the niceties in life to have a budget that really gives a little bit of those priorities into the community. I think that the need and desire for that racket complex up on Egan Park with all those pickleball courts, it does reflect a lot of the needs of the community, and and I would suggest that you still have to have some financial commitment to maintaining those quality of life issues.
Well, please don't misinterpret, and if it came across, I'm not suggesting we don't invest in improving quality of life for residents. And please don't misinterpret that.
No, I don't know. I said you're trying to balance the priority between the hard investment and the quality of life investments.
Right. And I understand, but we to me, and I'll pick the big number, $900,000 for a park when we had neighborhoods underwater because tidal check valves didn't work or whatever the issue may be. I question, are we putting the money where we need to? Mm-hmm. And do we need to slow down? Same thing, this is the same discussion we had a year ago on Paso Grill Park. There was a 800, 750, 800, it was a large number in there. And it was agreed we moved the money into a fund to use for storm mitigation purposes. And again, we're a year later, and the Don Cesar neighborhood around Lazarillo Park went underwater. It's about a year. And are we doing enough? And I use that as an example. There are plenty of what happened in Paso Grill or what happened in the Casablanca neighborhood, Bella Vista. I mean, are we doing enough? Parks are important. We have a lot of parks, and they're a great asset that we have for the city and for our residents. I personally enjoy using our parks, so no debate there. So if we want to take the approach that we leave it as printed, that's fine, but we need to have further discussion on the projects as they come forward. I mean, in years past, Commissioner Marone, I will tell you that your budgets got put in place, and when it came up for capital appropriation, the answer was, well, it was in the budget, it was all approved, staff went off and worked on it, so what's your problem? And I'm just being open here, that this is what happened, and I'm just trying to, might as well have the discussion earlier than later.
And see, I look at it like for Hurley Park, there's $200,000 there. We really have, I see it as one project that really needs to, I want to see get done, and that is reopening the concession stand and the press box, because we now have Little Leaguers there again. But we have, and I've talked to a bunch of people, and so is Jennifer McMahon, a bunch of people who are willing to volunteer services, contractor services, and things like that. So we may be able to drill that thing down to a very small number, and then I can say, look, we have that done. We can take the rest of this money and move it into a reserve fund. But I think if we keep thinking like that in our own districts about what's happening and what's budgeted in our district, and we keep thinking like that, we have that mindset, then we can make it happen. But we just, you know, I need to be, at least in my district, cognizant of what we're spending and what amount of money we don't need that could go somewhere else. So I see that as an example of where we can end up moving money, but when the capital improvement comes up, that's the time to say we don't need this much, and now we have the rest of this and we have nothing to do with it. Let's put it somewhere else. And I don't know if that happens, you know, routinely. I just don't. I haven't been here long enough to know that.
Well, I think inevitably the way the capital is, the capital improvements is generated is, a lot of these we don't have the design for yet. So numbers are plugged in kind of with the best knowledge available at the time, and then, you know, we've had our finance and budget review meetings, we've had our workshops, including one on the capital. But just because we approve this doesn't mean that we have to spend this. An example was the docks at the west end of Corey. When that came up, we said no. We decided not to do that. Right. So I think the fact that it's in the budget is an indication of a direction that we're going in generally at a high level. But we can always come back in and look at specifically, because typically what happens is it'll come before us for design approval. Design fee approval. It's kind of a typical process. And then once we approve that and we see how that goes, then it comes back before us when it bids and you have construction dollars. So there's several opportunities for us to kind of look at those priorities and the sequence of which they're going in. And a lot of times that's fluid because things change. Things could change during the year. So I don't think right now we need to be kind of reorganizing these. In terms of the staffing, I do agree with the city manager that I think we made the commitment with the firefighters, but there's other positions. You know, we're going to be going through administrative changes. There's a chance to, you know, relook at those things both as a commission and from the administration level. So I do agree with that. I don't know that we need to make that formal, but I think we can talk about that in upcoming meetings to not, you know, make those effective until you know, we have another chance to look at those. So I do agree that there's opportunities for us to look at those things again.
Okay. I see it as we control the budget doesn't control us.
Right, right. And I've heard people say that because it's in the budget. No, because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to do it.
You know my view on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we all agree with that. It's kind of a, you have to do this though. You have to have a capital plan, and it's good that we do 5 years out. The first year is a lot more definitive than future years, but it's got to be fluid.
On the head count, the firefighters, did we not agree on 4?
3 firefighters, and then there's a position of a deputy fire chief. The deputy fire chief is not a line personnel, so it's more of an admin person. So in my mind, there's a difference between those two. So the 3 firefighters are people that are jumping in on the trucks and responding. The deputy fire chief is more to help us better manage the organization in the fire department.
Do you mind if I speak? I've had this deputy chief job description since 2018. This is a function. This is not a addition that is fluff. This is something that I see as a function of the fire department. For instance, this Labor Day weekend, I worked 2 48-hour shifts to cover the district chief. We do not have redundancy in our positions. There is no other fire department in our area that has one administrator. So I just want to be clear that this is not something I'm trying to add this year to create some sort of window dressing. So if you have questions about it, I'm here.
But it's in the budget.
It is in the budget.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that
At 4.
it's given the
3 plus the 1.
the impact that is intended. It is not to fluff the administrative staff. So,
Yeah. It's in the budget, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not hearing anyone saying, take it out of the budget.
Yeah, right.
Thank you,
all right,
Chief.
thank you.
Any other comments?
I didn't mean to jump the gun on the millage. I thought we were
no.
just going to do the millage and then go on to the budget. I know they're kind of all together,
Yeah.
but that was my intention when I did was
No, no
not to avoid talking about the budget.
Understood.
after
No, not a
that.
problem, of course. Mayor, any comments?
I mean, Commissioner Grill, with what you said and what the other commissioners said, I think it necessitates a larger conversation. I think one of the challenges that I found this year is, we had 2 budget workshops, and there were just a quick run through, 6, 7 hours. Here's every item in the budget without actually having the ability before those items were brought to us to have a discussion. Do we even want the staff working on these items, these departments? Yes, we're going to put them in the budget. To Commissioner Gurl's point, 6 months from now, we'll have the conversation, well, you approved it in the budget, therefore, we've been working, getting the bids and everything else for this project. And I think one of the things that we maybe need to sit down and look at is as a city and as a commission to decide where are the priorities, right? Whether it's public works, whether it's streets, whether it's flooding, whether it's, whatever it is, and then be able to have that conversation ahead of the budget workshops. I think we're kind of working our way backwards, and I'm not sure that we necessarily have a fully flushed out plan and where we want to go, and then building the budget based on the direction we want to head in. So I think that's something to look at in the coming year, and maybe make some adjustments.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask if there's any public comment at this point, but we had it again. But if not, then we have a motion on the table for ordinance 2023-11. Do we have a second?
Second.
City Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Fryslowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can I ask the question, procedurally, have we changed our process to allow people to vote remotely? It's something we've talked about for several years. I have obviously no concern that the mayor is calling in on his vacation, and we thank him for that and participating, but it's not in our rules of our ordinance for how we conduct meetings. And should we have that discussion at this point, since we have a vote on the table?
I think with the way technology is advanced, I think the way Mayor Petrilla is presenting is as if he was sitting in the chair, and because of that,
Yeah, but I think his question is really a legal question, because you don't want to invalidate the approval of the budget because of a technicality. So the city attorney really needs to
Understand.
address that to make sure that when the items get submitted to Tallahassee and everything else, you're not creating a problem by accepting a vote that really doesn't change the outcome anyway, right? So,
I
point.
can say that in my research of Attorney General opinions, the only Attorney General opinion is that they don't count towards quorum. There is no Attorney General opinion on voting. And that it is something that Attorney Dickman, Attorney McConnell, and I have been working on together for the last month. And we're preparing something to bring forward for consideration to incorporate into your rules and procedures. I don't have that information now. I can defer to Attorney Dickman. It is something that I'd want to acknowledge that is on the forefront of our minds.
Commissioners and Mr. Mayor, yes, this is a topic that's been coming up more and more around the state, obviously, since COVID, because there was the opportunity to have virtual meetings. The absolute rule is you can't use electronic devices, to constitute a quorum. So you have a quorum, you have 4 people there, so you can't use virtual or anything to achieve the quorum. The general rule is that it should be the exception and not the rule. So you shouldn't abuse the virtual, if you can't make the meetings all the time, maybe you shouldn't be there. But I think it's been seen as when there's a situation where someone's got to be out of town and they can participate, they have all the materials that everyone else has in front of them, they've reviewed it. I will say that, in this situation, the millage rate that you're adopting only requires the lower vote, so it only requires the 2/3 vote, I think, or 3/4 vote. It doesn't require a unanimous vote.
clarification that it requires supermajority, Andrew, which is 4. It requires supermajority vote, which is 4 votes.
Right. So you've got everyone there live in person anyway. But yes, it is a topic. There are some AGO opinions. There's a very old one that says that, if someone's sick or they have to be out of town and they can still participate, the real key is that they have the materials in front of them or they've reviewed them, and also that there's no prejudice to anybody. So this is not a quasi-judicial hearing. Obviously, this is a budget hearing, and you're achieving the minimum requirements of the law by having 4 people there in person to vote on the budget. So I would say that there's no problem with the mayor voting, and it's not going to hurt anything either.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. I think if I could request the staff, city attorney, city clerk, as you go forward looking at this, we also have to look at how it would, if at all, cover boards, advisory boards, because some are quasi-judicial and some are not, and I don't know if that changes anything. So thank you for that, city attorney and city clerk.
You're welcome.
Okay. Let's move on then to do we have a motion for ordinance 2023-12, which is adopting the budget?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2023-12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. City clerk, can you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Frislowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. Any other items?
I apologize for missing the beginning of the meeting. Before we adjourn, I do have a question for the city attorney, if that's all right.
Yeah, as long as the question relates to the budget, because the only discussion item during the budget hearing is the budget.
Is it budget related?
I think your budget, you've already voted on your budget and your millage, so I don't know if this is just a topic or,
Well, we asked the city manager to prepare a separation agreement for the city manager, and I just wanted to see what the status was, because we gave him a deadline on the 26th, which is approaching. And since we're here, if there's any items that need to be addressed before that meeting, then we could then give direction to the city attorney. That might be helpful.
Just to give you an update, the interim city manager contract has been finalized. He's starting on the 30th of September, and we have not finalized the separation agreement with the city manager.
Okay, do you anticipate having that ready by the 26th?
I have no idea. It's really in someone else's hands. So the city manager has an attorney. That's who I have to work through.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
So just remind everybody, our next meeting, City Commission meeting, is our regularly scheduled meeting at 6 p.m. this coming Tuesday, which I believe is the 26th. So we'll see everybody there. Just a reminder, the 4:30 meeting was canceled, and it'll be combined as a discussion item into our regular commission meeting. So with that, we'll close the meeting. Thank everybody for coming on their Saturday morning, and the meeting is now closed.